Hey, everybody! Welcome to Overtime. This is where the really good stuff comes out, and we have an important issue to talk about we didn't get to in the broadcast, and that was, the emotional extended debate that we saw in the House. Holly, take it from there. What was on the table, and why was it so emotional and contentious?
Right. So what you had on the table was the Senate Bill 14 that would ban gender modification procedures for those under 18. So it would require you to be an adult to receive those permanent life-altering interventions that are supposed to change gender. So, you had a long day of amendments, most of which, I believe all of which failed. You had, Representative Tom Oliverson, who is a physician, who laid out the bill and very calmly and patiently defended the attacks against it and arguments against it. But the real star turned out to be a Democrat state rep from the city of Houston, a Black woman by the name of Sean Theory. And she had been pretty quiet up until this point last night when she went to the mic and talked about how she had looked at all of the evidence, how she had examined the scientific data, what these hormone blockers do, what the interventions do. She had talked to families on both sides of the issue, and she gave this very heartfelt speech about compassion and wanting to do what's best for children, and explaining her decision to buck her party and vote with the Republicans to pass this bill. She was one of several other Democrats who voted for the bill, but it was one of the most moving speeches that I think I've ever seen on the House floor. And in fact, she got kudos from other Democrat state reps who ultimately disagreed with her and voted against the bill, such as Representative Morales, for having such courage and explaining her position in such a how would you say, empathetic and kind way, but also really emphasizing the data and the science about the development of the human brain and the prefrontal cortex that allows you to make good decisions, the impact of those hormones that have permanent impact on an individual. They're effectively sterilized, most of these young people that take them. This is a permanent decision. And, her conclusion was that if you're underage, you're not capable of making this permanent life-altering decision. And so she did side with Republicans. That did pass on the second reading last night. It does have a third reading, which is a kind of a procedural issue, but it's pretty much passed at this point, unless something dramatic happens between now and the next, the third reading, which I believe that vote is scheduled for Monday. But Theory really stood out. She's very just well-reasoned, but also, with empathy and just a genuine, compassionate speech. And it really struck people.
Chau Nguyen, is a former colleague of mine, and I was just listening to Holly. Chau, I couldn't have done a live shot that well. I mean, that's great. I give myself kudos. I recruited Holly to this show. Charles Blain, it's pretty awesome. Okay, Chau, back to the subject. Look, you go to these hearings and you hear science on both sides. The experts on both sides. This doesn't seem like it's a hard and fast rule that one way is wrong and one way isn't. I mean, what's your take here as a therapist, and what are you hearing from the people you respect most who provide this care or deal with folks in transition?
When it comes to transgender care for youth, it is so highly intimate and personal, family to family. I think you're on it, Greg. This is a matter of gray area. And I do believe that it should be entrusted between family and their physicians. I mean, this is a person, and now we're bringing policy into place for the protection of children. Children you don't know what they're going through. You're looking at stats like suicide rates among transgender youth and young adults. I just don't think that this is an issue that should be in the political policy realm. This is doctor to family. This is something that they need to make the best decision and judgments for them under medical care, under advisement with their family doctors. And because it's a difficult, there are mental health ramifications for this. And you know that. I mean, I've met a number of transgender youth, counseled some, who talk about how highly difficult this is and how personal this is. Bullying, suicide rates are high. You can't ignore those things.
That is extraordinary natural sound we're hearing. The birds singing. I love that.
It's AI.
Look, I want to say this though. Chau, you meet face to face and deliver valuable therapy to your clients. Can the transition process, shouldn't that be a process that extends deeply into the teens until adulthood before we start taking powerful chemicals and putting them into developing bodies? I'm not convinced yet, and I'm just one Texan that taking medical steps should precede therapeutic counseling steps at a very hefty level.
These are highly personalized and individualized and intimate medical decisions that family members get to make with their doctors under extreme medical care. I think what we're hearing in the public domain is it's an easy decision. It is not an easy decision for these youth. It is very personal. And I think we can all have a soft spot for youth who are really struggling with their gender identity and have come to their parents and saying, this is, and I don't know why 18 becomes the magic number. I know a lot of very immature 18-year-olds as well as very mature 18-year-olds. Again, it's individualized. This is one of those areas that really should be looked at carefully and just admittedly as a gray zone, as a zone that we don't all know about, and that we have to families and the kids and their medical team to make sure that they make the right decision.
Tony is expecting a call from the New York Times book review and has to leave soon. So I want to get his take on this issue, and then let him go. Tony, thoughts?
Well, no, and I do commend any elected official who pours their heart out, is passionate about the issues, regardless of if I agree with them or not. I think I'd like for all of our representatives to humanize this issue, to really feel it, and to really explore their souls for all of that. But on the same note, I think I've seen many of those sort of testimonies, and that sort of level of testimony reminds me of the Uvalde families who've been giving that sort of testimony for over a year, and who likewise, because of their passion for this, got a bill furthered along. And to me, there's certain similarities. The bill that one of the bills they're pushing for is to raise the age for acquiring the assault rifles. And maybe we're talking about the same thing. How old is a young person when they can finally decide, making long-term ramifications that affect them, their community? It's kind of very, very similar issues, yet one will probably get to the governor's office and the other will not. So I think the next step for us to not be at each other's throats, believe me, I enjoy arguing with my peers. It is Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to all my colleagues who are so smart, so talented, to give so much back. I do enjoy debating, but I enjoy debating if we're going to get to the hard work. And I think that's the next step, where every official should put their heart on the line, but then sit down, roll up their sleeves, and come up with hard work. So I'm willing to check for that. I'm willing to check in for that, Greg. Appreciate you giving us this forum where we can, yell at each other, but also come to common ground at the end.
Well, I want to compliment you there on uncharacteristically strong linkage between two issues. Don't you agree, Charles? For Tony.
Yes.
That was actually, that linkage made sense.
I mean, sure, it's fair, but I think the thing is, I mean, I don't know. You're talking about two different issues. You're talking about a right versus something that someone is struggling with that is irreversible when you make that decision. So, I mean, you're kind of talking about apples and oranges here, but I can see the link. that Tony references. But I do think that to Chau's point, yes, it's intimate, but it's irreversible. And you can always go forward, but you can't go back. And how many kids change their mind from day to day, week to week, month to month, year to year about various things. And what is the harm in waiting? You're muted.
These aren't impulsive decisions.
No, I know that. I'm not trying, and maybe I said that flippantly, and that's not what I'm trying to say. But what I'm saying is that how can you be sure that a child under the age of 18 who doesn't have a fully developed brain is making the right decision that is going to be a decision that they can live with for the rest of their life? Maybe they can't make it at 18 either, but at least we have come as a society to realize that 18 is an adult age where people should be able to make their own decisions. But I mean, to say to a 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old that this decision that you're making, you're going to support it as a parent and assume that this is something that they're going to want for the rest of their life at that young age. I mean, it just seems, I can't see how I can't see how it makes sense to me. I just cannot see it. And I get that there's so much struggle that comes with it, and they're sad and dealing with depression and all of these things based on how they feel. But I don't see the harm in waiting because those decisions are irreversible. I don't know. I just can't see.
So you want to raise the age for assault weapons, it sounds like.
No, I don't want to raise it.
We're going to circle back around. You taking off, Tony?
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay,
Hi,
buddy. Be
Tony.
safe.
Good luck
Travel safe.
today.
Hi, Tony.
Okay, Michelle
you.
Maples, you heard this conversation. I thought it was pretty thoughtful. You want to chime in here?
Absolutely. I mean, I understand the individual argument, and I understand that this is a very sensitive issue, but I can't get on board. I can't get on board with this. I think that if the magic number is 18 to buy cigarettes, and the magic number for 18 is to get a tattoo, which is also pretty irreversible, then this is no different. And this is more serious. And if we're going to put some sort of like magic number on it, it needs to be when this person is an adult who understands the consequences of this, as opposed to a child who, to parrot Charles, the brain is not fully developed. And I mean, I was a total tomboy in high school. Total tomboy. I mean, I know that might surprise you, but I mean, but thank God my mom was not like, does Michelle want to be a boy? Like, no, I like to run around barefoot and follow my dad around in the barn. And so I just think that it is a very sensitive topic, and I don't see any harm in waiting until you're an adult to make this sort of transition.
And
All right, I'm going to switch gears on you guys real quickly.
Clear. I just want to be clear that Dr. Oliverson, in laying out this bill, talked about, we're not downplaying this issue of gender dysphoria. We are saying that they do need care and attention. It's more in the area of mental health care, not permanent medical interventions. And in some cases, the hormone blockers have permanent effects. In some ways, sterilization. It affects your bone density growth. It affects a wide array of things. It's not just your reproductive organs that these hormones impact. So it has a huge impact on the entire human body that is still growing and developing. And, there's a permanent, status here. And I think, am I wrong? Did we not raise the age for vaping or whatever to 21? Last session? I mean, so now we're talking about people in some cases going in and having a surgical procedure to remove healthy body tissue to try to make them feel better about this gender dysphoria. And, it's hard to persuade that is the solution. What some of the testimony that came in committee came from detransitioners, those who had gone through transition as young people and regretted it and felt like they were pressured to do so. And it didn't solve their mental health issues, but it created permanent, lasting damage. These are irreversible procedures.
On the flip side, and I shared this story with you, a close friend whose son was suicidal, and she to this day says, if I had not supported his move to transition, I don't believe I would have a child. I think I saved his life. So while I tend to, I think that waiting to the age of determination with heavy, healthy doses of counseling and therapy with skilled practitioners like Chau is something that is vital. You know, I don't know how I would have voted on this, and it was a tough one. It was a tough one for a lot of folks. I'll tell you what also was a tough one that House members did not have to make was when they amended a pistol switch bill on the House floor to try to get the age increase on the semi-automatic long guns. And more passionate testimony from Joe Moody, Armando Wally from Houston read all the names of the victims from Uvalde in what was, you know, a very poignant moment. Briscoe Cain walked up, called a point of order, and the House did not have to take a record vote on this very important decision, which is whether or not to raise the age to 21, not for firearm ownership, but for ownership of a weapon that you can put a 100-round drum on, and which fires a projectile that at a much higher speed, which much more damage than what than a pistol anyway, for sure, and for most, and for you can fill a room with 50 rounds of military grade ammunition in a matter of seconds. And I'm not sure, you know, look, you guys know I'm a gun owner, and I'll fight till the last dog is dead for the right to bear arms. But I think if I were pushing a button in the legislature, I would have voted to raise the age, and maybe call me someone who was touched by what he heard, but those parents asked for that increase in age to be a memorial to their children. And you know, that's the way I feel about it. But it was kind of gutless, I thought, that the House, whichever way they wanted to vote, they weren't forced to make a record vote on this issue. Anyway, that's my speech.
Let's also talk about, there's some criminal justice reform bills that have been passed on the Senate side are still lingering in House committees. One of those would prevent the issuance of a public recognizance bond, personal bond, for those who are arrested and charged with felons in possession of a weapon. We have that happening 40 some odd times a month here in Harris County, including individuals who have prior convictions, are caught with a machine gun and are released, you know, without any bond, and often go on to commit additional crimes. Big surprise. So that bill's lingering. And while we, you know, the House was excited to pass this constitutional amendment proposal for online betting, they have not taken up the constitutional amendment that would give judges the discretion to, you know, hold somebody without bond. And, you know, we do have some people who are arrested that, you know, we're not talking about the person who, you know, for first time offender. We're talking about repeat violent offenders, prior convictions, things like that. And under our state's constitution right now, you know, we're supposed to give them bond. And so they try to set the bond as high as possible. But, you know, these are, you know, when we're talking about gun violence, we have to talk about, you know, all the different aspects. We have people who are known actors, who are known to be violent, who are known to commit crimes using a weapon. Other legislation that seems to be stalled out is enhancing penalties if you have committed a crime using a firearm. So, you know,
this is a weapon war that's in our streets that time and time again are hurting innocent victims and children. I mean, listen, there's a whole subculture now of survivors of mass shootings, right? They're coming together because they've survived mass shootings. There are survivors of mass shootings who are living with lead poisoning because of, an AR-15 pellet being, eviscerated into their bodies and having to deal with those deleterious effects for the rest of our lives. I don't know what other wake-up call we need at this point. And to Greg's point, please, just as a gesture to these families, please do this. This is a common sense legislation to me. We're outside of Charles, I think we're all parents here. If we were put in the same situation, what would we do? What would we do? We
also have the Parents of Murdered Children meeting here in Harris County once a month. And, we also have, a problem with criminal justice and not taking known violent offenders off the streets. And that needs to be addressed.
Hold on. Let's let Michelle Maples, who has worked in this arena, has strong feelings, and has been patiently waiting to share her thoughts.
Well, I respect everybody's opinion on this panel. You've put together quite the Isle of Misfit Toys here, Greg.
I'll take that compliment.
I will too. I own that.
So as a tribute to the Uvalde parents, I think that we need to do something that will make a difference. And I don't think that raising the age from 18 to 21 with AR-15 is frankly going to make a difference. And what makes these active shooting scenarios so difficult is that not one are alike. They're all very, very different. The data shows they're all incredibly different motives, different people. But what the data does show is that the average age of the active shooter is a 34-year-old male. And so that doesn't help us here. And the weapon of choice of an active shooter typically is a handgun. And so, again, I think if we're going to do something, we need to do something on the mental health aspect of this. And this is Chau's wheelhouse. How do we get these people before they do something atrocious? And I don't know the answer to that. And all I can assume is that we really have to take a hard look into our own households, into our own community, and start thinking like, okay, is there an issue here? How do we address it? And how do we get this person help? Because not one case is the same.
No, it's not. But until the next active mass shooting happens involving an AR-15, right? In Allen, Texas, wasn't that an AR? What was that?
It was.
That was also an AR-15 with a 33-year-old. And let's keep in mind, when you say weapons of war, an AR-15 is not a weapon of war. It is a semi-automatic weapon. It is not a fully automatic weapon, which is a weapon of war. That is what we send soldiers across the pond to fight with, or with fully automatic weapons. And so then AR-15, Greg is right. You could put a magazine extender on those bad boys and you can have a ton of ammunition come out of it, but you can do the same thing with the handgun. There's also magazine extenders with handguns as well. And so yes, these are all deadly weapons, but when you say weapon of war, that's not true. They look alike, but the guts are not the same.
Okay, 3, 2, 1, Charles Blain pushback time.
I agree with Michelle. My frustration is we do this too often where we look at policy and try to pass policy based on how we feel. We're upset about something, and so we try to address it through measures that don't actually address the root cause of the problem. We do have to do something. I'm not saying we don't, because every single time there's a mass shooting, the same elected officials get on TV and say mental health and then turn around and then don't fund mental health and then don't do anything and then don't give legitimate, actionable solutions to what can be done. So I get it. I'm tired of it too. But what I don't want is for us to go and do something that then does not curb the problem, because all it does is give a false sense of hope to people who really want to see some change in this measure. Now, I think we do need to look at with a lot of these shootings. I remember I think it was the Buffalo, New York one. And there was another one, maybe Florida or something, where the family knew the kid had a mental health issue. They reported it and the local police didn't do anything. And he still had access to weapons. I think it was both of those, actually. So we need, and the one in Michigan where I think they found the kid's gun in advance of it or something, but he had another issue, the one where they ended up charging the parents finally. Well, we need parents to be more responsible or be held accountable when they know things like that are happening. We do need more funding for mental health, but we also need to reduce the mental health stigma so that people actually take advantage of it and don't shy away from it because they think that it's going to label them as something or other. People need to talk more openly about their mental health struggles, and so that other people can feel more comfortable with it. I mean, there's a lot that needs to be done, and I don't know what the answers are, but I don't think that passing a law on the heels of Allen that wouldn't have stopped Allen, because that's when they did it. That night, they called either that night, the next day, they called the committee hearing and passed that bill out of committee because of the feelings about it. And it wouldn't have stopped that shooting. Yes, maybe it would have stopped Uvalde, but I fail to, I don't believe that someone who is determined to do that is going to be, they might be delayed in getting the weapon, but they're still going to get access to the weapon somehow if they are determined to do that. It's like the same thing where they say, you're only stopping good guys from getting guns. The bad guys are going to still get them however they see fit. And so I just don't want us to address an issue that's very serious and needs addressing, but purely based on how we feel about things, because then we get led astray and we don't actually address the problem.
Mm.
Great.
Hey, another issue that happened this week I didn't talk about, and I just want to see if anybody has any thoughts. The Good Samaritan, depending on your perception, in New York, in the New York subway.
Well, I don't know. Good Samaritan.
That's an interesting story that the guy's going to be charged now, and there's debate about, and I haven't followed it terribly closely, but I understand that new video is out of the incident that shows when he releases him from the chokehold, maybe the guy is still breathing. I don't know, and again, I don't have all the evidence in front of me or anything like that, but there have been people killed on the subway, I guess, in New York. What's it, like 7 times this past year? Victims of, people with mental health issues, to Charles' point. And you have stories of some of these people trying to push others in front of the train. Just horrifying things. And, what happened here? You had someone who's obviously has mental health issues. I'm not sure what was going on before, but you had 3 people attempt to restrain him. And gosh, what a terrible, tragic situation. But I think that one, good investigation, hopefully fair, review of the evidence, and a fair trial, and see what comes out of it. But
yeah, I think there's only one certainty there, and that is that not everyone is going to be happy with the outcome.
Oh gosh, no. Yeah.
So
well, I think a lot of the problem with today is that it's either good guys or bad guys, and nobody understands that that's not real life. Real life is not black and white, and that's what I think irritates. I think that's what even irritates Governor Abbott with the Uber driver shooting, is that it is not black and white.
Right.
And it's just these cases are so difficult. But I read that the individual apparently had this guy in a chokehold for 15 minutes, which seems like almost impossible to be able to maintain that sort of grasp. I don't know. I've never had anybody in a chokehold. I have no idea. But I know that it takes some serious strength to do that. But I think Holly's right, is that instead of letting this play out in the court of public opinion, let's get the facts out. Let's get some testimony out there. If there's any video, let's see the video, and let's put this before 12 people and let them decide what they think happened without any sort of political motivations behind it.
Okay, we're going to do something out of character, but I think it's appropriate this morning. Say something nice about your moms. I'll start with you, Chau.
Oh, my mother came to this country with 4 kids in tow as a refugee immigrant with no language skills, barely 24, and hustled and worked at Kmart. And anyways, she's amazing. She's the reason, I am the person I am, and I'm so lucky to still have her in my life. You just made me very emotional. I feel like I'm having an Oprah moment. Crying.
Well,
Happy
I know
Mother's-
we have 3 great moms with us, and gosh, Holly, I cannot imagine somebody more devoted to her boys, and Chau, to your girls, and I know Michelle Maples. Holly, say something nice.
Oh yeah. So my mother was widowed at a young age with 4 children, including a 3-month-old baby. And she had a tough time, tough go of it, but raised her kids, and she's got quite a group, a spirited group of children. Full disclosure, we were a bit of a handful. I'll admit that, and so kudos to her for surviving us.
And you've had to do single parenting yourself, and I think that your husband's strength and your mom's strength descended upon you to pull it off.
Thank you.
Maples, you're just starting this adventure.
I know. And now that I have started this adventure, I look at my mother with complete awe because she's a retired teacher. So she taught all day and then made sure I made it to all of my extracurricular activities and somehow had a home cooked meal on the table every day at 6 p.m. I have no idea how she did it. But she did it with grace, and she is the best role model I could have ever had. And Brian Kane's to be my cheerleader today, and I am the luckiest girl that Lindy Byington is my mother.
Charles Blain, I've had the privilege of hugging your mom around, sweet shoulder hug, and she watches this. I feel like she keeps an eye on us. I know she keeps an eye on you.
Yes, very much so. But yeah, no, she's great. I mean, she's, one of the things growing up, my friends would always like, you have the coolest mom. You're so lucky. So, she is great and very strong. When I was young, my dad used to drive long haul buses across the country. So a lot of time it was just, me, her, and my brother. And it was always great. She left work when I was young so that she could start like a little neighborhood daycare just so that she could stay home with us. And so she's always been supportive and continues to be supportive. And yeah, is probably like the biggest fan of the show. So yeah, definitely appreciate it.
Right.
And
Well,
Greg, happy Mother's Day to the mama in your house. Knowing Michelle, working alongside Michelle, and I know that she's raised 2 incredible kids in your family dynamic. So happy Mother's Day, Michelle.
she's a warrior mom for sure. And I want to say something to my mom. My dad taught me how to compete, and what success I've had in this world, I attribute to both of them. But my mom taught me how to work hard by example. And every day, every moment I'm on this earth, I know I've got her 1000% in my corner. And that's one of God's greatest gifts. And with that, I wish you all a happy Mother's Day, and thank you for sharing your brilliance with us. Okay.
Happy Mother's Day, ladies.
Mother's Day.
Your moms.